Hello and welcome back to the Freedom Podcast. We are here with Pastor Dave Thomas.
Oh, watch out. Pastor Dave. Pastor Dave.
Do I use your full
Official.
name when I'm saying Pastor? I say Pastor David. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Dave, I was thinking the other day, we've been in Psalm 23, haven't we? And it's all about David's life. And I'm like, I'm still not ready to be a David. I'm just not grown up enough yet.
No, okay. You never had that moment where you crossed over from being Dave to David.
I wrote on my notes saying, do I need to cross over? And then maybe not yet. Maybe in 10 years. Who knows? Who knows? I feel like, David, it's a big name to take on. You've got to be ready,
It is,
got to grow.
it is a big name. How you doing, Dave?
Mate, doing great. Loving church planting in Charleston. We had a great Sunday actually this week. It was really great. Some awesome VIPs. God just really moving in worship as well, which is awesome. Great message from G. Oh, what a way to finish out the Good Shepherd series. It was
It's been a
awesome.
great series, isn't it?
Mate, loved it. Loved just the freshness and the depth that everybody who's communicating through the series just brought to this, like, such a well-known scripture. But mate, it was so powerful, so impacting, particularly that last week around the table. Love G preaching from the table. It was so good. It
I
was so
think
good.
we're so ready to go into battle, aren't we, in Freedom Church? And we love to preach about fighting the good fight and all the kind of scriptures that are going to get us fired up. But actually, we all need that balance too, of knowing that we're going to go into the presence of the Shepherd. He's going to lead us. He's going to guide us. He's going to care for us. And I think that it's been so healthy for our church to just have a little bit of a focus on that over these last few weeks.
100%, man. 100%. It's that you can't go into the battle, if you will, without that. You can't chase down, without that. And it always challenges me, I think, mate, when I think about eternity. That part of our relationship with God is what we're going to do for all eternity. Like the battles, the stretches, they'll all be over. And yet it's not the thing that I always practice enough. So it's been really good.
That's so true, mate. It's a really good point. Okay, well, everybody, what we're covering today is our subject. I mean, you've probably seen it already in the subject header here, but we are going to cover what our relationship should be with social media. What's a healthy relationship with social
Come
media?
on.
And if you'd said this phrase about just 20 years ago, that people would have no idea what on earth you were talking about. And now it's a huge part of a lot of us for our daily routine every day. Is there some kind of connection to social media? And so it's such a huge facet of our lives. So there's not a lot of things directly in the Bible about it because it's obviously something that's only just come along, but there's so many principles that we can take from Scripture and apply it. And I think it's something that so many Christians wrestle with, assess, evaluate, lean more into, lean out of. And so I thought it would be a great one for us to just think and focus on today and really say, what does a healthy relationship look like with social media? And I was wondering, Dave, maybe we could just kick off a little bit about our own relationship with social media right now, what that's like, what we use, what we don't use. So, Dave, tell us a bit about you and what's your current relationship with social media?
Mate, it was so funny when you text me saying, let's talk about social media, because literally 2 days ago, I just deleted my social media
Really? All of them?
apps. Yeah, well, actually, what I'm going to experiment with is I heard somebody talking about this on a podcast not too long ago, and they said that they moved their social media to an old device. So,
Right.
like many of us, we upgrade our phones and then we sell the one, we recycle it, or we trade it in to get a bit of cash. And he said he moved his social media onto a secondary device. And so he just checked it then in the morning or in the evening. So I'm going to try that because I find that I have a bit of a love-hate, a little bit of a good-bad relationship with social media. I was thinking about this when I was getting ready for obviously coming into the podcast and thinking, I think my relationship with social media is a bit like my relationship with certain carbohydrate-based foods. It's kind
More.
of, yeah, mate, I have such an issue with crisps or chips for our American friends. And yeah, it's something honestly, mate, that I cycle through, loving it, and it being a benefit to my life, and then other times it being a drain and something that I get into bad habits with. And so, what do I use? Particularly, I think my main go-to would be Instagram. I use YouTube. I know maybe it's not quite like a pure social media, but I know it's a platform that lots of people use in that way. But Instagram, Facebook a bit, mainly for marketplace. Josh, Del Boy Dave, got to get a cheap deal. I don't use Twitter. I know you use Twitter, and I'm not on TikTok either. But yeah, so mainly those platforms. But right now, I'm trying to move it over to a different device. See what happens.
Okay, no, I like the thinking. That's a good idea actually, because then it's just not at your fingertips. You've got to be intentional with it. It's quite nice. It's a good idea.
What about you, mate? What do you use?
Well, I was just thinking about you, Dave, and I remember you coming on Instagram for the first time. I'm fortunate enough to have known Dave for a long time, and so he was there for the dawn of Instagram. And so I remember following Dave, seeing his name popping up on Instagram, and thinking, okay, I'm going to follow Dave and see what he's got to offer. And I remember there was this picture. I think it's the first picture he posted of Saz's bump, and she's pregnant with their first daughter, Eden, and it was kind of like grey and grayscale. We loved a good Instagram. I was like, this is a bit weird. It's the first photo, and there's just a bump. There's not not the rest of Saz, just a bump.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking, okay, that's unusual. Maybe it's artistic. Dave's a bit of an artist. Maybe this is it. And then. Hold on, there's another one. And he's posted another picture of the same thing. And then there was another one. And then there must have been 4 or 5 pictures of pregnancy bumps. And then I realised what had happened. That Dave thought this was a photo editing software.
Yeah, right.
He add filters onto these photos of these precious photos of the pregnancy. And he wasn't realising that he was posting them out to the world. So, mate, it's come a long way since then.
Mate, I'm not sure whether I have actually come a long way since then. But yes, mate, I remember getting a text from you saying, do you know that like everyone can see these pictures that you're
Delete.
Yeah, I know. I was like, get them off. What? Yeah, and I think it was also. I think at that time, Josh, I had a pretty terrible haircut as well, didn't I? Like long sweep across the front of my hair, and I think there were several
You've had some great haircuts over the years, mate. I think we could do a whole podcast about your haircut.
Yeah, by great, mean terrible at times. You gotta try.
I'd praise it.
Yeah, mate. No, listen. You definitely have a natural ability to get technology. It's not I learn it over time, but it's my disposition is kind of I'm not there. But no, yeah, the dawn of Instagram, mate. We were all on Twitter back in the day. Do you remember like when it was first out?
Just coming to my side of things, yeah. The thing that I would use the most is Twitter. And it's funny because it's not really social in terms of the fact that none of the connected people there's a handful of us really that are on there that I know. Otherwise it's kind of news, sport. It's quite an entertaining feed of information. And so that's my main usage. I used Instagram, as well, and Facebook a little bit, but honestly, not for much. So those are kind of the 3 that I would use, but Twitter is easily the most. And when there was a big surge when Elon Musk was buying it, back in the fall last year, I was trying to get a few people to come on. I was like, come on, things are changing. This is a fresh start, because I wanted people to come back to Twitter. Because when we had when Freedom was really accelerating church planting from Hereford, when we were just Hereford in 2011, and then we started planting, there was lots of us on that, and there was a lot of excitement, a lot of hype. We were always bouncing around this message, or we were retweeting something, or we were getting excited about a leadership meeting we just had, and it was actually a lot of fun. And it was kind of like plug. I remember we would come back from like a leadership meeting, and you were always a bit wired after the leadership meeting, and we would always just go on Twitter for about half an hour, 45 minutes or something like that, and
So
just see
true.
what everyone's saying, the hype, the energy, the reflections, the funny moments. It was great. But that, I can't even remember why it happened, but it just slowly started declining. I think in about 2012, 13. It didn't last that long.
Yeah.
It was only a year or a couple of years or something. And then, most people left after that. But I found it quite an entertaining, engaging thing. But it definitely can have unhealthy rhythms, and I think find it addictive. And I just took 2 weeks off from it on my holiday, because I'd just come back from holiday, and it was great. And I didn't really miss it, to be honest. It was
Yeah.
it's one of those kind of chewing gum things, really, where it's like you're not really digesting anything, but you can have it's like just having a piece of gum for a few minutes here and there, um, and it does keep you connected with the world, but it's not always a
Yeah.
positive thing either, in terms of like what you're taking on so much information about what's going on all over the world. But for the most part, that's what I use. And at Instagram, I use that for obviously keeping connected with friends and family around the world, seeing what people are doing, and it is really good for that. Using it for church as well, and just celebrating what's happening in church. Or
Yeah.
one of the things that I noticed, though, I think a couple of years ago, I tried to start a Barbarians Instagram, because I wanted to build more of the community of our men right across Freedom Church. And I noticed something, that there is hardly any guys I know that really use Instagram. A lot of them just
Yeah.
don't really use it. It's a lot of women on there, and not nowhere near as many men. Not that in my life anyway, in my circles.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the things I noticed, is actually that's really changed, because again, 10 years ago, it was very equal. There was guys
Yeah.
and having said all that, my brothers all use Instagram, and we have a memes chat on there. And we had a WhatsApp group that we never used. My brother's WhatsApp group, you just like every now and again, one of us would say something, but it was pretty rare. Now we use it almost every day to just share reels and memes and just something funny. So it's actually been quite a good way to just keep in touch with my brothers who are around the world. Well, we probably, especially being the lads, we probably wouldn't be
Yeah.
otherwise texting each other that much.
Mate, I think it's fascinating, isn't it? How it kind of it sort of comes and goes with trends, doesn't it? But it also comes and goes in different seasons of life. And I don't really post that much on Facebook, but now being away, having moved here 8 months ago, that's definitely I check Facebook more now than I did in the UK, because it's how I stay in touch with stuff. And honestly, if I remember your birthday, please don't be offended. There's only one reason why: it was on social media. I'm terrible. I'm terrible at it. But you're right, mate. It kind of goes through seasons, doesn't it? And I think it's interesting, because I think when Twitter was first out, and like you said, 2010, 11, 12, 13, we were all on it. It was like, this just be real, and there'd be so much activity. But there also weren't many other alternatives. And like now, like I know a lot of people that are on Reddit a lot, and they're on like other kind of platforms like that. And it's just really interesting, like almost what it says about us, about why we use it and how we use it. And I know for me, like with Instagram, I think one of the reasons why I was like, okay, I need to move this off my main device is I wasn't really using it for anything beneficial, not anything unhealthy or ungodly or sinful either, but just too easy to open up the search section and troll through stuff. And I know for me, like my relationship with social media, the reason it ebbs and flows is because I just find myself in those spots. And so it is just fascinating what it almost says about us, season of life, but also state. It's quite interesting, really.
Yeah, for sure. One of the kind of ideas that I think about often is about how we can use social media, but sometimes social media can use us. It grabs hold of us, and it's like we
Yeah,
can, you've heard of the doom scroll, where it's like your brain is just shut down and you're just scrolling and nothing else is really going on, and it's like you're not really taking it in, or you don't even care sometimes. What's your kind of navigating that idea, Dave, where not letting it take hold of you? How have you almost tried to master it, where you have felt maybe, oh, I'm getting a bit I'm getting a bit sucked in here, or it's not feeling like it's adding value to my life at this moment.
Yeah. Mate, just quickly, I don't know if it matters, but you're breaking up my end quite a lot. Is
Yeah,
that
it doesn't matter because
okay? Sorry.
it will capture the audio locally. So as
Great.
long as you
Sorry.
can hear me, we're good.
Okay, brilliant. Sorry, I just want to check. Yeah, man. I mean, honestly, that's that's a good question, but it's also not one that I necessarily have nailed because, like, even now I'm like passing it over. But I was thinking about it, like, and there's like a parallel for me with food, is that you go through times where I go through times where I've got good patterns and I've got bad patterns, and I think often I like trying to limit it where it becomes bad and mitigate against it where it's good. So, we live in the land of fried chicken, Josh, don't we? And it is good. It is good. It's tasty. But a little bit like with fried chicken, I try and limit how often I eat it. So I think the only way that I've found to have a good relationship with social media is to put a limit on it. And realistically, when I find myself in seasons where I've lost that limit, that's where I like, okay, I've got to do something to get that limit back. So I've done different things like only looking at it in the morning or only looking at it in the evening or putting like a cap of amount of time because recently, the reason why I've moved Instagram and Facebook to my second device, if you will, is because I just open and scroll in it. Got a bit of time. Even just the other night, we're watching this series together. Saz goes to the bathroom. I open up Instagram. Like, how long is she going to be? 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds? It's like, oh, I've got to, like, okay, that's a bad,
For the moment, yeah, for
you
sure.
know. So I think limit it. And then the only other way is like mitigate against it. I think one of the biggest dangers for me, but I think for us as Christians, is the voice of social media because of how easy it is and how addictive it is and how even at points seductive it is. And I don't even mean in like a
Yeah.
sinful way, but just it's so easy. It quickly outweighs the voice of God, quickly outweighs the voice. So if I'm in social media before I'm in my Bible, if I'm in social media more than I'm praying, if I'm in social media more than I'm even reflecting, like yesterday, we had this incredible message. Incredible. I'm sitting there. This is life changing. That truth is amazing. Have I spent any time today meditating on that? Or have I opened up social media? So I think for me, the only way that I can have a healthy relationship with social media is limiting it and making sure that I'm investing more in the things that actually bring health to me, more in my word, more in prayer, more in worship, more in talking with Saz and friends about the things of God. And when I know now when I'm out of balance with that, I can see it on my screen time. I know it in my soul. And when that happens, I kind of go quite hard in the opposite direction. It's like a reset I've got to hit. That's the kind of some of those. And honestly, mate, like some of the platforms I'm not on, that's not just because I don't really like that platform. There are certain platforms I'm not on. Like honestly, for me, I've given TikTok a go a couple of times, and the only stuff that's ever come my way, it's just been,
Your
in
dances didn't get any traction at all, did they? And that was disappointing because when you were dancing and no one was watching, it was it's not worth it.
Do you know what? That's what my eldest daughter would like me to do more than anything is do TikTok dances. Oh my goodness.
Some daughters are
But for me,
embarrassed by their dad dancing. Yours is actively encouraging you to dance. I mean, I think the world needs to see this.
well, the world probably does need to see it. Whether I need the world to see it is another thing altogether. But there's
Right.
certain platforms I find
Yeah.
like even the content on it, I'm just like this is going to drain me even more. Like so
Yeah, I get that, mate, and I think that there's something around sometimes like what's our capacity, and if you're taking on more and more platforms, I think that's one of the things that kind of killed off Facebook was just the fact that people started going over to Instagram. You can only do so much with your time rather than trawling through site after site. So I think being intentional and thoughtful about that. I think one of the things that you mentioned there that's really important for us all in listening to this, if wanting a healthy relationship, is you've got to evaluate. You've got to take a step
yeah.
back and look at it and just go, okay, how's these last few weeks been? How is this? How is this holiday been? How is this? How has this year been with my relationship with social media? And if we're taking those steps back to just look at the picture and just see, does anything need to change? What could be healthier? I think that's really good for our relationship with social media. I think the other big thing is when you were kind of likening it to food, and it's something you consume, is fasting and taking a break from. And we're fasting today, aren't we, from food? We're filming this on Monday, and there's something around that relationship with food that's so healthy by saying no, just taking a break. And it's not because I overate yesterday, but actually there's just something about having a bit of time off that is good and healthy for our whole being. So it's not that we need to kind of throw all of social media in the trash. There's some things that are funny, that some things that even, I remember someone talking about how we can think of it as doom scrolling, where you'll just scroll and do nothing. But what often is happening is you're finding a bit of peace in your day, some kind of zoning out. We're finding something that we can kind of latch onto, that we can disconnect a little bit. So there are some good things about social media. It's not all negative. And I think sometimes that we as Christians, we can get, I just need to be rid of it. But actually, I think it's quite hard to be rid of all social media in today's day and age. So I think it's almost monitoring how much you do have. And I think if you fast regularly, it helps regulate some of your own relationship with social media, and if there's any addictive tendencies in there. So one of the kind of big breakthrough moments for me, I think, in my relationship with social media was having it was through reading the book by John Eldridge. It was Get Your Life Back. Great book. And it was really good. It was about just taking more time out. And one of the things that I think about with social media is that, say, if I'm reading a Twitter feed and maybe I sit down, I read 20, 30 tweets, it's like 20, 30 different voices all coming my way in my life. And it's like, imagine going into a room and just saying, right, I want to hear from you, and just getting everyone just to talk to you. They're just saying one or two sentences. But you're getting a lot of noise and information. It's a lot to take in. And a lot of us probably in the physical will be like, hey, I can't cope with that much information, but we do it on a screen. And you mentioned this earlier, Dave, but our ability to be able to hear from God, we know in that story of Elijah that God comes not in the kind of the loud thunder or the fire, he comes in the still small voice. But one of the kind of tendencies, I think, of our generation and those that are coming after it now is that we fill every bit of space with noise, with other voices. And I think that's when social media can be detrimental to our spiritual lives, is because we have so many voices and so much noise coming our way, that how are we going to hear the still small voice? Because that's where we need to hear God. And if we're always having no moments of silence, that can be really damaging to our own relationship with God. So I think that it's not just that the idea of using social media, one of the ways of monitoring it is making sure we're not using it all the time. I think we've got to get more comfortable again with silence. We've got to be happier to not be doing anything. And even being away on this holiday for the last few weeks, that was one of the things even sometimes my thumb would twitch a little bit. It's like, I'm stuck in a queue. Nothing's happening. Maybe I should. And it was like really just training my mind and my body and my brain to be like, I'm not going to give into that. No, I've shut it down. I've deleted the app. I'm not going there. I'm not going to replace it with anything else. And it was really good for me, really healthy, even coming back from that, just almost going back on social media, but not feeling the same connectedness as before. And I think that's one of the great things that we can do to temper our relationship with social media. It's just fasting and just taking breaks. And we can do that for a month. We can do that for a week. You can do that for a few days. I don't often think one day is that effective. I think you need more than that. But that's, I think, one of the ways that you can master it and not let it overcome you.
Mate, I totally agree. I think, God like if we liken it to food, God's blessed us with food, hasn't he? You know, I'm not being funny, mate. I feel blessed to be in a generation where I'm connected, you know, living
Yeah.
overseas from where I'm from. Like, man, I wouldn't want to be doing this 200 years ago and not hearing from somebody for like 6 months, 12. It's a blessing. But like you said, it's, you know, it's a blessing to go to Chick-fil-A. Come on, it's a real blessing, but it's in moderation. And like you said, it's, I think that question you're asking about when you step back is, are you in control of it or is it in control of you?
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I recognize where I get unhealthy is not just like my habits and how often, but also the motivation of why I've turned to it. You know, you mentioned about silence and boredom, but actually there are times where, you know, I don't eat massively unhealthily, but I can still feel on a day that I'm down that desire for that bit of this or that bit of that. And I know that for me, sometimes with social media, I've had to stop and challenge myself going, why aren't I turning to God? Why am I not turning to him in this moment? Why isn't prayer an option for me now? Why isn't, you know, listening to some worship an option for me now? And I think when you, like you say, when you fast and you create room, I don't know about you, but when I fast food, I think, why don't I pray more in the day? You know, when we fast social media, I think there is something so powerful. Interestingly also, mate, you know, is a spiritual dynamic, and that's the most important dynamic. But I was listening to a podcast on a run recently. There's this guy called Andrew Huberman, and he's a neurobiologist. And it's really interesting. I don't think any faith, I think he's an atheist, anything like that, but he was talking about the dangers of social media. And he was saying that the danger of social media is that we scroll and we move from this thing to that thing to this thing to that thing with no transition. So you engage with something, but you then engage with something else and then engage with something else. And what he was saying is that we've lost the art of waiting. And we have this immediate, and, you know, you want that hit. Maybe like when we were kids, like you're looking forward to going to that party on the weekend or that thing on the weekend, and it's not going to come until Saturday. Whereas when we can open up our phone and we can find a bit of fun and a bit of laughter, and like you said, there's a blessing. But actually, there's something of learning to wait. There's something of enjoying that moment that's far off, that's healthy for our brains as well. So it's interesting to me that even in neurobiology and people that have got no kind of faith, they're almost saying the same thing as we're saying, which is actually you gotta hold off, you gotta wait, you've got to put pleasure in a place, and it's not good that it's always there and it's always immediate in your pocket. So yeah, man, it's fascinating. We're in the summer holidays, aren't we, right now? And one of any parents listening to this, you'll know the dreaded thing of boredom for your kids on the summer holiday. One of the things Saz and I have said to our kids, we're what, a month in already here in the US, and of course we're trying our best to entertain them and, you know, all this kind of things. But we've actually said to them, guys, it's good that you had a bit of boredom. What are you going to do? And yesterday we were trying to do a workout together, and the kids kept going, "Whoa, what should I do? Well, I haven't got anything to do. What should I do?" And we're like, what do you want to do? What do you think you should do? By the end of it, they've started this whole creative thing that they're going to do. And they've engaged in creativity. And as a parent, it would have been easier to go, here's my phone. And trust me, I'm no saint. I do that as often as anybody else. But in that moment, we're like, we're going to let you be bored. And actually out of the boredom came creativity. And that's not going to be the case every time. But I think it's something powerful in that as well, you know?
Absolutely, mate. And I think that there's definitely something in that in terms of parenting, because we are a generation that obviously had social media introduced to us. So I remember, I think it was 2006, I got a Facebook page, and that was, I had Bebo before that. Did you have a Bebo page?
MySpace?
No, I missed MySpace.
I'm just that bit older, Josh.
Yeah, just that touch older. But did you have a Bebo?
Mate, I was too old for Bebo. I went from MySpace to Facebook. You know, Bebo was like, I just missed it.
Yeah, for us younger ones.
Yeah.
So anyway, we went Bebo, and then I remember getting Facebook. It was right around us getting married. So it must be 2006, and now. So I was 20 at that point, but then now I'm raising kids that will at some point probably want a social media page. I don't know about you, Dave, and what your thoughts are, because I know almost your daughter, she's Eden, she's a lot more aware, isn't she? And it's much more of a thing. My boys are blissfully unaware at this point in time and are not really interested. But I know that things will probably change in the coming years. But thoughts on raising children with social media? What have you guys talked about? What guidelines you're going to have in place, and what you think is right and healthy for them?
Yeah, no, I mean it's a huge question, honestly, and yeah, Eden is, she's matured a lot in this last season in particular as well. She's grown up a lot, thinking the process of moving, and yeah, there is a question for her of like, when can I, and what about, and I think. Firstly, I think Saz and I have decided to separate the question of phone as a device and social media, that they're not symbiotic, that,
Yeah, right.
she could actually have a device before she's on social media, for example, or maybe even the other way around. For us, I think I know we've decided that she'll have a phone probably in the not too distant future. We're testing it at the moment. We have one of our old phones that she has access to have an iMessage group with some friends and some family. And, there's been days where her habit with that has gone beyond what we have been happy with. And so we've said, hey, okay, that's protracted this being fully yours. So we haven't actually set a date yet fully when perhaps she would have her own phone, but we're just starting to let her use it and trying to teach her to put it away and teach her that actually, no, you don't just pick it up in the morning, and it's amazing how just automatic. And honestly, Saz and I model that. So we've got to change in that. But I think she's 12 now. It wouldn't surprise me if by the time she's 13, she has a device. We haven't made that decision yet. But actually, when it comes to social media, we're thinking that is going to wait even longer. And again, I don't want to speak for, we haven't fully decided, but I think it wouldn't surprise me if we even said, hey, you're going to wait to 15 or 16. And that sounds radical, in the world that we live in. But the evidence, the evidence is out there, Josh. The evidence is out there that the way social media is wired, and I totally agree with you. I don't want to be one of those Christians that shames it and it's all terrible. But the neurological evidence, the behavioral evidence is that we are so not ready for it in our young teens. The way it's wired. So I don't know if you know this, but Kate Winslet, a very well-known British actress. Do you know about this, Josh? That there's a whole documentary.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's basically all around the challenges her daughter had through engaging with social media early. And it's a very moving. Kate won an award for it, and her daughter gets up on stage and talks about, how grateful she is for her mum putting this out there. And basically, even in that secular documentary, they're saying parents, not even at 16, the human brain. So again, if you're a parent and your child is on social media, don't feel condemnation in that, right? I'm not sitting here saying we've made that decision, but I think it's a really important question to ask, because the human brain is not ready for that stimulation. You used a great example, Josh. 20 people walk in a room and you can't hack it as an adult. What about, let alone a teenager? So yeah, we haven't made decisions, but I think honestly, social media, we think would probably ask her to wait even longer than after she has a phone at this point, I think, honestly.
I think one of the huge things around social media is comparison as well. And just that's already a huge thing growing up as a teenager, especially a teenage girl, but I think teenage boys as well, comparing and seeing what other people, how people are received and what people have commented and how many people get likes and all this stuff. And how that is so amplified in a dangerous way to through social media. And I think that's one of the things you have to really just careful of and monitor as parents. And those things you can like turn off likes and things like that. So, getting around. But I think one of the really important things as parents is just having eyes open and being really intentional, not just letting it happen, knowing what your children are being exposed to. But just coming back to everybody, I think that comparison, jealousy, I think are real things that can come out through social media.
100%.
Seeing what other people have got, seeing how people are received and responded to on social media compared to perhaps something you post. And it's, again, what are we feeding there in terms of our emotional well-being, our spiritual well-being? So I think those are some of the dangers. I think that other dangers that come to mind for you, Dave, on social media? Anything else?
I think I was thinking about this, and I think, obviously social media, there are some really obvious dangers. One of the things, if you're part of Freedom Church, I've shared this story before, major breakthrough in my life about 15, 16 years ago was getting set free from a real issue with pornography. And it's interesting, in the last few years, as I continue to support and pastor people through, particularly guys, through this, the vast majority of guys, it's on social media that they're actually engaging with that content. So I think there's some out and out, we know it. There's violent content, there's unhealthy content, and because it's so easy to scroll, and maybe we just scroll past it quick, it still can impact our minds. But I was thinking about it. One of the subtle things that I think is huge is the tone of social media. So I did some study a few years ago about public speaking, and found out that statistically there's three things that people listen to when you're speaking to them: their body language, their tone, and the content of what you're saying. And the content of what we're saying has the least impact. Body language has the most, and tone has the second.
Wow.
And it's over 56% of what somebody's listening to when they speak to you is your body language. 34% is your tone, and less than 10% is what you actually say. And here's the brilliant evidence of this. If you've ever had an argument with your spouse, your parent, your child, it's not what you said, it's the way you said it. Okay, there we go. And what I think is powerful is we often look at the content of what's being said, but we don't realize that the tone of what's being said is influencing us even more. And I think there's a tone, the tone of insecurity, the tone of fear, the tone of anger, the tone of judgment, the tone of jealousy. We might say, oh, well, I'm not really watching stuff that's out and out bad, but is there an undercurrent? Is there an undertone? And interestingly for me, I'll just be honest and vulnerable. In moving here, I let my physical health slip. I got into some unhealthy rhythms with food and lacking exercise, and I put on a bit of weight. And, I love exercise. I love those kind of things. I'll turn that round. But one of the reasons I decided to move Instagram off my phone was because I would follow workout videos, gyms, I realized that even though I wasn't watching videos that were literally saying to me, you're overweight, you're ugly, you're not, that tone was coming through just by watching those videos. And actually my self-esteem and my sense of shame was increasing in that. And so I think we've got to watch for, what's the tone, mate, great one. What's the tone around faith? Like, I think cynicism is a tone that runs through social media videos. What about authority? What about leaders? So I just think it's a subtle thing that the tone of social media, the tone of what we're watching, the imagery of what it might actually be having an even greater impact on our minds than the out and out content itself. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely right. So one of the things, Dave, that I feel like this is particularly a Facebook thing, but people can move into a bit of debate and making a point. And I think that one of the things for me, having watched people move into perhaps expressing opinion, is there's not many times, it can happen, but I think it's rare, that has been a helpful forum to have those kinds of conversations. So it's not that it's wrong to ask the questions or even to answer the questions, but there's something about the faceless environment, the ability to be able to have any length of time to be able to respond, that it doesn't often bring the best out. And I follow a number of people on Twitter, and I find that people don't really change their opinions. What they follow and retweet or get excited about are things that amplify and confirm their opinion, rather than things that challenge their opinion, that they're open to change or open to listen. And that's on, both sides of every debate. So I think that even for us as Christians, thinking about, I'm going to let them know. And I can't tell you how many times I have personally had that conviction of, like, I've got to say something. I'm going to hit this. I'm going to hammer this out. I'm going to write something. And then I've taken some time and reflected on it. What's the difference going to make? And I remember one time I saw something online on Twitter that I responded to, and I decided. So I sent post. I was feeling fired up, and I was like, "This isn't right." And then my phone started blowing up with responses because it was like a public discussion, and I was just like, "This is not good. I need to quickly like delete this. Like, what good was I going to gain out of this?" The people that agreed with me were all cheering. The people that had already disagreed with me weren't going, "Oh, you actually make a good point," or they were coming in and absolutely hammering me. And so I thought, there's nothing good that can come out of this. But it was so easy to fall into the trap of, oh, I'm gonna let them have it. They need my voice, and I'm gonna really make the difference here. It's often for our own sense of gratification that we express that debate, not to actually help change the tide on something, but often because we feel better for having expressed ourselves or corrected something.
Yeah, mate, it's a spot on, and honestly, it's such a danger zone for us. I think as Christians, particularly, let's go there, particularly around key political moments of the years and the seasons, key events. It's massive, and anything. I think what did Jesus say? They will know about the love of God in the world because of how you love each other. So Jesus is saying that a witness of the gospel is how we love each other as Christians. So if there's anything that's going to increase division between us as believers, I don't think that we can match that up with the word of God as God's heart. Now, again, does that mean that we all have to agree? Does it mean we're not going to need to have tough conversations and navigate things where we're at different ends of the spectrum? No, absolutely. That's part of it, but we do it in relationship. We do it with love. We do it face to face. We do it with equity. We do it with the goal of being one at the end of it, as something of the gospel. And I think going sort of combining what you're saying there with the point I was making about tone, there's such an anger. Oh
Yeah.
man, you just need to put the flame near to the paper, and it's woof, and it goes up. And I think we have to ask ourselves a question of, is what I'm about to write filled and a fruit of the Spirit? Is it full of love? Is it joy? Is there patience? Is there kindness? Is there gentleness? Is there faithfulness? Is there self-control? And if it's not filtered with that, is it coming from the Spirit or is it coming from the flesh? And like we talk about it, don't we, Josh? We talk about being bold and standing for our faith, and there are times we're going to have to do that. But I think rarely social media is going to be the place to do that. And
Totally agree.
yeah, it's and I think again, I think it's easy to feel like we've witnessed behind a keyboard. I think it's easy to feel like we've preached, but actually, have we gone next door? Have we had dinner with that neighbor? Have we had a coffee with that person? Have we built relationship? So much of what you're talking about destroys equity with people in an instant. And again, I don't agree with cancel culture, etc. But too easily can we walk into those things with a comment, with a like, and there'll be other people say, "Oh, that's just fear. You're just being afraid." I think there's a big gap between fear and wisdom, and we got to operate in that wisdom.
It's really good, Dave. And I think that one of the important things for us all to do is when we're connected with social media is think about what you're consuming from. So you can go onto any social media platform and edit and arrange really what you're consuming, who you're following, what you're accessing, and think about, what am I feeding from? If you follow someone really angry on Facebook and you come away from it upset or feeling angry yourself at their response, you've got to think, what is the value of me feeding from this 100%. On a regular basis? And I think that having a review on unfollowing or muting people if you don't want to upset them, I don't think that's such a big deal now, but it used to be a big thing. You unfollowed me. I I think that there's something around our health of just saying, I'm going to disconnect from this stream of information that's coming my way. Maybe I'm going to point to a few more that are going to be more positive for me. I think that's a really important thing to be mindful of. But when we're posting things, to be thoughtful, I thought that was great, Dave, to be respectful. Does it need to be said? I think for me, one of my checks and balances that I always have if I'm going to post something on social media is, would I be happy in 5 years, 10 years if this was read out in a public forum? Do I feel, if I can't say yes to that, then I shouldn't post it. If there is 1% of doubt in my mind about what I'm about to post, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's another thing for me as well, of just thinking, I'm only going to do something if I can feel absolute certainty that I feel at peace about it.
Yeah.
So it often probably leads to the reason why I hardly ever post, because things don't pass the threshold. But just last, yeah, go on.
Mate, I think it's so right. But I was thinking about this recently, and I think that we often post in defense, where we're trying to keep hold of something, where we're trying to defend something. But I was thinking about this recently. I felt God like challenging me about those who want to keep their life will lose it, but those who will lay their life down will gain it all and more. And I wonder whether another good filter is what I'm about to post about positively sharing the gospel, or is it just about holding that line? No, you're wrong. This is right. Don't you come near me. And I think that is such a key. You're right. We create these echo chambers, and then we want to hold the line and hold the ground. And I'm going to repost that thing because, then it's going to tell somebody. But actually, Jesus says, go and give your life. Go and give your life to the world. Go and lay it down. And in the cause of the gospel, in the cause of, seeing people find salvation. And I think for me, with like some of the posts that I want to write sometimes, I'm like, oh, I'm just trying to defend something, or am I trying to actually share something into the world and be evangelistic with what I'm doing? And I know that won't be the case for everybody, but that's been a challenge that I've been sort of feeling recently. And again, mate, honestly, Josh, I hardly post. I'm so inconsistent. It's terrible.
And I think just to come to close this really, Dave, I think that I just want to talk about some of the kingdom purposes of social media to finish, because I think that, like anything in the world that's been invented, it can be used for good, it can be used for evil.
Yeah.
I think that what we have to do is keep waging war for good. There's so many things that can be temptation. They can create jealousy, they can create anger, they can create division. What is it that we can use it for good? Because I believe that's always going to be more powerful. Yeah. However, I think that often as Christians, the easiest thing for us to do is say, it's hard being on social media, so I'm out, and I'm not going to engage, and I'm not going to post, and I'm not going to share anything. And I think that it's a challenge for us. And again, we don't have to take responsibility to do this all the time. And I think, like we said earlier in the podcast, it's very important to take breaks and to maintain your own health first of all. However, I think that the kingdom purposes are there, and they're to be utilised. Hello.
Sorry, mate. They've all come in. This is how. Sorry, guys.
Literally told them to stop and they.
Sorry, I'm still recording this podcast.
I am so sorry.
Okay, can you all go in my room?
Everybody into the shower. Sorry, Josh.
Don't worry, it'll be 5 minutes. Give you an entertaining moment on the podcast.
Yeah, there you go. Come on, go through.
Okay, so to finish off, Dave, I just wanted to ask you really what your thoughts were on what are the kingdom purposes of social media? Where can we use it for good? Why should we, as Christians, bother?
Sorry, mate. Sorry, 2 seconds. Guys. Sorry, bro. This is an absolute shocker. You can add this in at the end. Taya, you're not a pterodactyl. Can you go that way, please? What on earth? Mate, just give me 2 seconds.
All right.
Taya. Where's tonight? I know. Sorry, mate. They're at the pool and the thunder and lightning has begun. So I think this brought an early close to the pool trip. They were with my neighbours, who some of my neighbours freak out about the lightning and the thunder.
I mean, I think when I first moved to the States, I was like, oh, to get over the top. And then when you see some of the storms, that, okay.
Yeah, it is.
I get it.
Yeah. Can you go through to my room? Is that everybody?
No, even got to the job.
Okay, that's fine. We'll only be 5 minutes. Okay. Sorry, babe.
Sorry, Josh.
No, don't worry. It's all right.
Okay, mate. Do you want me to pick up from that as if you've asked that?
Yeah, you're just answering the question, yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah, man, I think it's a really good question because, like you said, most of the things we struggle with can be strengths. So I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is use social media to stay in touch with people and relationship and
Good.
if it starts to stray from actually staying in touch with people that you actually have relationship with and you're spending more time on social media than actually talking to real people around you, that's always a good filter. So I think stay in touch. I think second one, use it to encourage, comment on I often don't comment on stuff online, but I'll send people a WhatsApp and I'll send them something. Hey, that was so good. Because one of the things that I've found is, I would tend to get, you didn't comment on my thing. So I'm like, okay, well, sometimes I take it to WhatsApp, but I think use it to encourage, use it to empower. So like if you're going to share something, that's impacted you, share it. And I think where you cannot make social media about you, it's going to be healthy. So don't post something to get a like. Like I hope this doesn't put anybody down, but the great picture you took yourself in front of the sunset, and it's like God's mercies are new every morning. I'm like, make it about God rather than about you in that. But exactly, yeah. You can go back on my social media. There's plenty of pout selfies. You'll find I've been guilty of it. But make it about others. Make it about God. And you know what? Enjoy what you enjoy in moderation. Like you said, you got your memes. I've got my my CrossFit workouts. Enjoy it in moderation and assess it. And when you know it's going over that unhealthy level, then do something about it and get it in balance.
I think that one of the principles that Jesus teaches us is about shining a light in the darkness. And I think that when we are scrolling through, that there's some people that might follow you where you might be the only Christian they follow, or someone that's really following God or being intentional around faith. And it's remembering that they might have been through all these other things that are making them jealous or angry or provoking some emotion. But what about if when they come to your post, it's actually something positive, thankful, grateful? I think it's representing kingdom principles in the way that we post, in what we write, and what we say. I think even the purity of what we post, if you,
100%.
They're not there posting with you and your girlfriend in in a bikini or something at the beach. It's like, do you know what? It's probably not helpful to be posting stuff like that.
Mate,
so we need to think about, I think, posting testimony, posting like church for us as Christians is a huge part of our lives. But if we never see it on our social media, it almost looks like, why do you post about, right, I'm back at the CrossFit. Oh, here's my next workout. Here's what I've done today. But we never hear about your morning at church, what the message was about, what God was doing that day, this new worship song that you enjoyed.
Mate,
it's so like it's not fully representative of what's valuable in our lives. So it's not that we have to post a daily testimony, but there is something about making sure that faith is thread through what we post, that it's truly representative of our lives, not just, oh, these are all of my non-faith things, because actually there's a falseness to that. If faith is truly a part of your life, it's of making sure that it's represented in the tapestry of your posts and your feeds. And people are watching. Sometimes they won't like, sometimes they won't comment, but I have known people that when they've been going through something, they reach 100%. Out to the person they haven't spoken to for years, because they know that there's someone who knows God, that follows God. They've seen it in their lives. They've seen the life that they're living through social media. And when the chips are down, when things are tough, they reach out to that person.
Very true, mate.
And they say, can I talk with you? So they haven't liked, they haven't commented, you haven't heard from them for a long time, but they're watching.
Yeah.
And I think that just to encourage you, if you share a scripture or you share something about your gratitude to God, don't always measure things on the scene, on the, oh, well, you only have these many comments or these many likes or this much engagement. Think about, just keep shining your light and seeing how God will use that in time. Just keep sharing it.
Mate, it's a fantastic point. Interestingly, I had a friend that I was trying to reach, over a number of years, and then found out that he'd started following worship artists and people that were like, I had no idea. It was like, oh yeah, I really like the music. Hadn't come to church at that point, but there was something that they were engaging with around the presence of God, and it's in their pocket, and they're like, oh yeah, I watch these when I'm a bit down, and it's like, I think it was something they saw that I'd shared or somebody else had shared, and then it gone from there. So, mate, I think you're 100% right. We're sowing seeds, but the seeds we sow have to have, faith. They have to have purpose. I also think, Josh, one of the other things is, the kingdom purpose of realness and not fakeness. And actually, sometimes when we share, do you know what? I was having a really tough day, but it was this word at church that really broke it through, or that somebody prayed for me. Sharing those testimonies can be so powerful, because 9 times out of 10, people are turning to social media for an escape, for an answer, for their, for a bit of peace in the tough day. And so again, I think, if all that we ever post is like, look how perfect my life is, and again, there's wisdom in how we share, but I think is that power of testimony gives way to witnessing. So, mate, I love it. I think shine your light is so good. Mate, I love it.
Come on. We're actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to try something a little different for next week's episode, where we're going to take some questions. Ooh, if we get enough questions. Sometimes you put these things out, Dave, and no one ever responds. But we're going to put out some questions that you can ask us on about social media around this subject. Maybe it's something that we've covered today. Maybe it's something that we haven't covered. But if you've got any questions off the back of this podcast today, you can email josh.snowzell, SNOWZELL at freedomchurch.cc, and you can send us in a question and we will come and bring those next week if we have enough. If we don't have any, we'll do something else. But that's the plan for next week. We're going to come back and we're going to come back to this subject again and ask some more questions. So, Dave, you up for that, joining us next week?
Mate, love it. Come on, bring them on. Bring them on. Send them in.
I hope that's been helpful, everyone. And we'll see you next week for the Freedom Podcast. Thank you.
See you, team.